The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Otto.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Otto and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Right now we are live on YouTube. Just double checking to make sure that it's live. Yes, it is live, so we are good to go there. We are live on YouTube, and then this will be posted on Facebook when we're done, and as well as Podbean. Joe, how's it going?
It's going great. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. There's some planes flying outside my house, probably searching for coronavirus people. So you might hear some of that throughout this, but don't worry about it. They're not dive bombing my house. They're just on the hunt for coronavirus.
They're coming close. They're coming close.
They actually are really close. When they fly, we're right near an Air Force base, and when they fly, you can read the USAF under their wings, which is kind of cool. But it gets annoying constantly flying over the house. So today, Joe, we're going to be talking about the Democratic debate. Did you have a chance to watch it last night?
I did.
And what did you think of it?
Did.
Broadly, what did you think of it?
You know, it reminds me of that video that you played before that I think you did a commentary on from Family Guy.
Oh, yeah.
It almost reminded me. I kept getting that into my mind. And then there's this comparison of, you know, Biden and Sanders and the Muppets. Have you seen the two Muppets that they have that they're running side by side in that meme?
Yeah.
So it reminded me a little bit of that as well, that we're dealing with two old white guys duking it out in what looked like it just, most of it didn't make any sense. It didn't, you know, they talk about what, you know, their plan for the coronavirus. Well, of course they have a plan for the coronavirus that'll be gone in the next 60 days and we won't have to be worrying about it at all. But yeah, I was underwhelmed, as I think that everyone was. Matter of fact, not a whole lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, no, not a whole lot of people are talking about it. Just real quick, I'm just changing a setting in the live stream. It was, if Bernie Sanders wanted to win, then he would have needed to come out a lot stronger than he did. And he took some swipes at Biden, but not nearly enough to win the contest that he needs to win over the next couple of primary dates. But he also wasn't nearly as nice as he would have needed to be to Joe Biden to get his supporters on board. So he kind of was in this middle ground of straddling the fence. I really didn't understand whether he was there to unite progressives or whether he was there to attack Biden. And I don't think he really knew why he was there either.
Well, it was tone deaf, right? If we talk about being tone deaf, that was a tone deaf debate. Because the biggest issue right now that I think Americans are thinking about is the economy and their personal well-being. Like, what does the future look like for them? And I'm not sure that either one of them even understands it, because neither one of them has ever been in a position where they didn't have guaranteed pay. They're politicians. They work for the government. And so there's a ton of people in our society, nearly 50%, that work for small businesses or privately held businesses. And here we're having a conversation about Biden saying that he will not deport anyone for the first 100 days if he wins.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a contest towards, like, get a free ice cream. Hey, get a free ice cream if you vote for me. It had as much effect on and fell on deaf ears because people are extremely concerned over what the Democrats have been saying for the last year to year and a half, with one hoax after another hoax after another hoax. And then you throw in hey, we hope the economy crashes, which has been said on national television by most of the politicians, saying the only way we beat Trump is if we have a economical collapse. And so now you're dealing with what equates to an economic collapse. And I think that a large part of America, is looking at the Democrats saying, you manufactured this. You created something where there's 3,000 people that have died. God forbid anybody die, but there's 3,000 people that have died globally, ish. And I think that they've turned there's this 8 billion person planet into the next black plague is happening right now before our eyes, when the numbers don't support it.
Yeah, there was something interesting. I was looking at some of the data with the coronavirus and how it compares to the influenza virus, the normal flu. And there's different ways to calculate the mortality rate of a disease. So just like coronavirus, regular flu, not a lot of people actually get tested and confirmed to be suffering from the flu, right? Most people get the flu, just go to bed, they sleep it off. So in a given year, we have somewhere in the 20,000 people range, somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people who pass away from the flu every year. And we have somewhere between 200,000 and 250,000 people every year who actually get tested and are confirmed to be infected with the flu. So but the problem is that when they determine the flu's actual mortality rate, they're not going based off the testing. They're going based off of the estimate of how many total people had the flu that year, which they have different ways to arrive at that number. The point is that they're taking the large number of people who pass away from the flu, and they're dividing that by the greater population, the estimate that they have, right? That has nothing to do with testing. It's just their estimate of how many people come down with the flu. That ends up giving you a very, very small mortality rate, a small percentage. But when it's being compared, I think I've seen like 0.1, 0.2%. When it's being compared to the coronavirus, though, the death rate is not being divided by the estimate of how many total people have it. They're dividing it by the number of confirmed tests. So there's two different, they're basically comparing apples and oranges. They're using the statistics to make the flu look smaller, the mortality rate look smaller, but they're using the coronavirus statistics to make that mortality rate look bigger. So they play games with the data, no matter how you slice it.
Italy, do you know the average age? We talked about this morning, but you know the average age of those that have died in Italy?
Yeah, it's 81 years old.
Yeah, so the average age, and look, no one wants anyone to die when they're 30, 10, 15. Age is not a requirement of whether you can justify whether they should or should not live, right? But the average age of the people that are dying in Italy is 81 years old. And if you take out or look at some of the root causes of why people over the age of 80 are dying, 37% of the people who are over the age of 70 actually still smoke. So you have people that are 85 years old.
It's not exactly a good combination for a disease that causes like pulmonary fibrosis to be smokers.
And so you're, I don't know if we'll be able to withstand the onslaught of the media disinformation. And I think there's a large amount of it that's actually happening out there. But I think that even if we have too many different ways that we can actually put out disinformation. So you have, Facebook and Instagram, and then you have all the news outlets, and then you have these blog sites. And the amount of information that I see every day that talks about, within 14 days, a case can go, or within a couple of days, things can go severe. And 50% of the people that it goes severe in have fibrosis of nearly half their lungs in a couple of days. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even understand where this information is coming from. So you go do the research on it. And most people don't do research. Mm-hmm. So we find ourselves having conversations about things that just aren't true. And it's scaring the hell out of people. So people started buying toilet paper at mass rates, and they rated all the food. And now they've rated, and perishable food, by the way, buying 10, 12, 15, 20 gallons of milk. I have no idea how they're going to store that or drink it. Yeah. And now it's moving into, guns, ammo, protecting their homes. I probably get 20 or 30 different emails a day that now are asking us that, hey, I heard from a reliable source, it's always a reliable source,
Yeah.
out of Washington that they're going to do forced quarantines and mandatory.
Yeah, the National Security Council came out today and said that that was a complete lie. So that rumor being put around on social media and by text messages, text train messages, yeah, it's not real. They confirmed today that there's no plan for a forced nationwide quarantine like that.
And why would they?
Yeah,
Why would they?
Yeah, there really isn't any reason to do that at this point. Yeah, you're right.
I feel incredibly my heart hurts for those people that are being adversely affected by the way that we are handling this as a society and the people that we're allowing to run all over, run amok on our economic systems for political gain. And I truly believe that this is all for political gain. I do not believe that they are trying to look out for the well-being of people while the stock market crashes by 25, 30% over a week, and the politicians come out and instead of uniting around some sort of strategy, they are attacking President Trump. They're attacking and creating more opportunity in this chaos. If this was truly about the well-being of us as people, they wouldn't try to politicize it or create opportunity for themselves.
They'd be rooting for Trump to succeed.
Absolutely.
Not trying to jab at him every chance they get and trying to use this as yet another. Did you see, I don't want to stay too much longer on this because we got to get through the debate, but did you see that one of the impeachment lawyers who worked for Adam Schiff actually has come down with coronavirus? Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
I'm going to pull up his name. He was one of the lead lawyers, Daniel Goldman. He was one of the lead counsel on the House Intelligence Committee. So he was an Adam Schiff staffer, and he has come down with coronavirus. And he put out a tweet saying that his test came back positive. I want to thank everyone for outpouring of support. It means a lot. I'm almost back to 100%. And then the next tweet was, Donald Trump can try to gaslight the American public by repeatedly saying that everyone who needs a test can get one. But that was not true a month ago, and it's not true today. And then he says, given his stated desire to keep numbers down for his political benefit, it is impossible to reach any conclusion other than that the president is sacrificing the health of the American public for his own personal interests. Now, that is Daniel Goldman. He was the lead attorney for Adam Schiff prosecuting the impeachment investigation, right? He was the staff attorney who was up there questioning witnesses. And he is now saying he couldn't get Trump on the Ukraine call. Now he's making the claim that Donald Trump is deliberately sacrificing Americans for his own political and personal interests. It's insane how everything that they look at is through this lens, that no matter what Trump does, they find a way to warp and twist it into making it seem like he's doing this for his personal gain. It's pathetic. It's sad that he has this kind of platform because it's a complete lie. It's a complete lie.
And people are just really, they just want it to be over. They want to have some sort of solution. I think everyone, when you get the flu, would stay home anyway, right?
Yeah.
People would want to stay home rather than go out and infect somebody else. So they're okay with that. I guess that the main comment that I keep hearing over and over again, or the sentiment that I keep hearing is, if you have an immune suppressed, an immunity issue as a person, or you're over the age of 65, maybe you should self-quarantine. You should stay out of the public environment. And instead, we force this quarantine on the rest of society and slow down to a place where, the weakest or the poorest amongst us are the ones that are going to carry the burden.
Yeah.
So that they can have this political football game that they're having right now on the national stage.
Yeah. No, it's really sad, and we'll keep covering this as more and more of these stories, like the impeachment attorney and whatnot, as we catch them politicizing this, we'll keep covering it. But I want to pivot now to the debate, the Democratic debate, because I was shocked, Joe, at some of the things that were coming out of Joe Biden's mouth because you don't even have to pay someone if you're Trump. You don't even have to pay someone to cut down those ads for you. His own words right there, just play that debate, because Biden's own words, it's so easy to use them against him. Let's go to this. You mentioned this earlier. Joe Biden made a promise on that debate stage that in his first 100 days, he would not deport anyone. Let's go to cut 2.
Let's turn now to immigration. Vice President Biden, you recently said for the first time that the Obama-Biden administration made a big mistake in deporting millions of immigrants, but you didn't publicly speak out against it at the time. What commitment will you make tonight that as president, you won't deport millions again?
Number one, I said that it took much too long to get it right. And the president did get it right by DACA, as well as making sure that he tried to protect parents as well. And by the way, moving on an immigration bill as well. The fact is that we already had a vote on an immigration bill, by the way, and Bernie voted against it, the immigration bill. Had he voted for it and it passed, we'd already have 6 million undocumented would be citizens as I speak right now. But I will send to the desk immediately a bill that requires for access to citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks, number one. Number two, in the first 100 days of my administration, no one will be deported at all. From that point on, the only deportations that will take place are commissions of felonies in the United States of America.
So to be clear, only felons get deported and everyone else gets to stay?
Yes. Yes, and the reason is it's about uniting families.
Let's cut this. Let's cut this off. Joe, that's about as radical as it can get. It's him saying that for the first 100 days in his administration, anyone who gets into the United States will be able to stay and no one will be deported at all.
Mm-hmm. I just want to know, from my standpoint, how you're going to protect my family, how you're going to protect the families of the millions of Americans that pay taxes, that work hard. How are you going to protect us from this onslaught of drugs and other things that come in from the borders, right? And everybody says, well, you're being racist. I'm not being racist at all. You can't enter the border of any other country in the world and not have massive consequences. Yet it's okay for the first 100 days, you all get a free pass. Just rush the border for the first 100 days and everything will be all right.
Yeah, let's listen to cut 3. This is Joe Biden talking about how he's not going to force cities and towns to hand over the illegal alien criminals they arrest to federal immigration agents. Let's listen to cut 3.
Vice President Biden, you opposed sanctuary cities as a presidential candidate in 2007. Where do you stand now? Should undocumented immigrants arrested by local police be turned over to immigration officials?
No.
Senator Sanders?
Okay, so it's pretty much as straightforward as it gets, Joe. No. So what he's saying is twofold. That if you get into the country and you're breaking the law, he's basically giving illegal aliens a get-out-of-jail-free card for the first 100 days. They can do whatever they want in the United States, and there will be no repercussions. Because even if they get picked up on a local charge, let's say drunk driving, theft, right, robbery, armed robbery, any kind of violent charge, they will still make bail, right? So then they can disappear back into the country. So not only is he letting them in and promising that if they get apprehended at the border, they will be caught and released and no one will be deported for 100 days, but the ones that do get caught will not be turned over to the government. He will not force states and localities to turn them over because he believes in sanctuary jurisdictions. Joe, I cannot imagine how dangerous of a country we would be living in if these people, which, listen, some illegal aliens that I've met, they have good, decent hearts. I wish they would have gone through this the right way, but I've met a lot of them that are decent people. The problem is there are so many illegal aliens in this country who do not care about our laws. They do not care about the principles that created this country, that they don't care about getting drunk at the bar, getting behind the wheel, and just getting onto the interstate, right? It's not necessarily even just evil people. It's just recklessness. That's why we're supposed to be vetting people who come into the country to determine whether or not we want them here, right? If someone's a raging alcoholic and they want to move here, maybe we shouldn't let them in instead of just waiting for them to total their car on the interstate, drunk driving, and kill someone. So when I look at this, I think of people like Sarah Root, who was the valedictorian who got killed by a drunk driver. I think it was in Missouri. I think about Kate Steinle, who was just with her dad on the pier, shot and killed by an illegal immigrant who claims he found the gun. I think about all these families who've lost loved ones. And I just imagine how many more of those cases there'll be if illegal immigrants are told that they can get off scot-free for 100 days, and even if they break the law locally, they still won't be deported. I can't wrap my head around it. It's too radical of a statement for me to even try and rationalize. It's to think that he is saying this to win votes from a certain demographic is insane to me.
But I talk to lots of people who are Hispanic and that are Americans, right? They're citizens. And many of them said, look, it took me 10 years, it took me as much as 20 years to actually get into this country and become a citizen. Why should somebody be able to walk across the border and not have to go through the same process that I went to become an American? It makes them appreciate, it cheapens the process, and it makes them appreciate what it took to become an American even less significant.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does.
At some point, we have to get to the point where we have a conversation about, the realities of having laws of the land, and whether or not you would, if you knew that there was 50 people in a room that you did not know, and you had a child, and you had your wife or your wife and your child were in that room with those 50 people, and you know anything about those 50 people, and they were all in beds, and you had to stay in a room with those 50 people, and you knew nothing about them, would you want your wife and son or daughter to sleep in that room with those 50 people?
Yeah, no, probably not, especially not with the coronavirus running around.
But even if we were talking no viruses, cold flu, head cold, as I like to call it, even if we weren't talking about that, we were just talking about your wife and child being in a room with 50 people, and you didn't know them, and they randomly just took them out of from across the border and put them in a room. Would anyone want to, in an open area, no guards,
no, of course not.
No supervision, would you want your wife and your child to sleep in the same room as those 50 people?
No, of course not. You'd want a vet who's going to be sharing that living space with you.
Right. Which anyone would. Right.
Which is why when you put it in those types of terms, when you go up against someone who wants open borders and you ask them, do you lock your door at night? And they say yes. And then you say why, and they explain that there are people outside that they don't want them to come in and hurt them. The same premise applies to border security. We don't shut down the border. We don't secure the border because we hate the people on the outside. We do it because we love the people on the inside, right? So vetting the people who come into our country and making sure that we are comfortable with them, that they are not loose cannons, that they are not criminals, that they are not drug addicts, alcoholics, whatever you name it, right? There are reasons that we have those systems in place, and this idea from Joe Biden that we're just going to throw all of that out, and if you can step one foot, one toe, one pinky toe onto U.S. soil, you have the right to stay here for 100 days, no questions asked. It's insane. I want to jump to this next one, Joe, because it just gets weirder and weirder with the promises that Joe Biden's making. So there's no surprise that the far left hates the fuel and gas industry in this country, hates the oil and gas industry. Joe Biden is now making a move for their votes by promising to end new fracking in the United States. Let's go to cut 4.
No new fracking. And by the way, on the Recovery Act, I was able to make sure we invested $90 billion in making sure we brought down the price of solar and wind that is lower than the price of coal. That's why not another new coal plant will be built. I did that while you were watching. Number one. Number two.
So that's him kind of doing his little counting. So no new fracking. Yeah. Let's go to cut 5. This is where he talks about no new drilling on federal lands.
I just want to give him a chance to respond, and then we can come back.
Let's stay on.
We're staying on this issue.
Number one, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry. No more drilling on federal lands. No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends. Number.
All right, so right there, he's saying no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill. Right now, the United States, amazingly, is the world's top producer of oil and natural gas. We are now producing more oil and natural gas than we need. We are an net exporter of oil. When you think about the other countries in the world, when you think about Russia, when you think about Saudi Arabia, fracking as an industry, as a technology, has allowed us to tap these resources that before, long ago, we never even dreamed of being able to reach them, right? Smaller deposits that made sense to actually drill down in one area. Fracking has let us tap this resource. We are, if you go back and you watch the debate between Joe Biden and Paul Ryan, Joe Biden then said there's no way we'll ever become a energy independent. Like it's not about fuel, it's about the alternatives, the wind, solar, hydroelectric energy, you name it. Joe Biden is on the wrong side of history here. Yes, we want to move away from these. It's a finite resource, we know that, and it's in our best interest to have cleaner technologies. But this idea that he's going to go in and shut down all drilling, right? Ban fracking nationwide. Either he doesn't know just the scope of how dangerous that would be, the economy, or he doesn't care.
Well, he's trying to win votes. He's not trying to talk about anything that substantially helps America. He's just trying to hit those key points that people care about. Sound bites. He's just creating sound bites.
Yeah.
I want to look like I'm for something and against something else. I think our political battlefield has become quite dangerous. It's dangerous because it's divided our society dramatically, right? It's a zero-sum game. It used to be that, hey, I'm pro-life or I'm pro-choice, and you could have a conversation between the two about what it means for one or the other. You could have conversations about social equality and gay rights, and that meant something for one, but they could have a conversation about the conviction that a person felt towards their religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And that was respected on both sides. Now it's gotten to the point where there's a demonization that happens on if you have any religious beliefs that are outside of the confines of what the left believes, you become the demon. You become the person that they need to reprogram, that you're wrong, you're a xenophobe, you're a bigot, and there's no reality behind it. It's all just banter. It doesn't. The words have no meaning, and the same thing could be said about the debate. The debate doesn't have any meaning. It doesn't have any reality tied to what Biden's saying or even Sanders is saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that people used to be able to be pro-life and pro-choice and talk to each other respectfully. We've mentioned this on other episodes of the podcast, but pro-choice Americans used to understand that the issue was so complicated and so divisive that it didn't make sense to have taxpayer funding go towards elective abortions. Joe Biden, last night, not surprisingly, has decided to grab that third rail and is now promising, if elected, that there will be taxpayer-funded elective abortions in this country. Let's go to cut one.
Right now, a woman's right to control her own body is under massive assault, unprecedented assault.
Yes.
Joe, you have in the past, on more than one occasion, voted for the Hyde Amendment, which says that a woman, low-income woman, could not use Medicaid funding for an abortion. Is that still your view, or have you modified it?
It is not my view. It's not my view. And by the way, everybody who has been in the Congress voted for the Hyde Amendment at one point or another because it was locked in other bills. The reason why I affirmatively came out opposed to the Hyde Amendment was that if we're going to have public funding for all health care along the line, there is no way you could allow for there to be a requirement that you have Hyde Amendment, a woman who doesn't have the money could not have.
All right, let's cut that there. Let's cut that there. So his argument, Joe, is actually, for a liberal argument, remarkably simple. Healthcare is a human right, which is what Bernie says. Everyone has the right to government-funded healthcare, and abortion is healthcare. Therefore, everyone has the right to a government-funded abortion. It's a simple equation when you look at it that way, but it's the most dangerous step that I've actually heard from a legitimately viable presidential candidate. Because you've had other candidates in the past promise this, but Joe Biden is now the presumptive Democratic nominee. And it wasn't too long ago that the Democratic platform said that abortion should be rare, right? That it should be rare. Now they're going with a candidate who is promising Medicaid-funded abortions for everyone who wants them. I don't know how this is a winning argument. I don't know how he can say he's going to bring the country together when he's stepping on this third rail and he doesn't even care. He's saying, my way or the highway. You, American taxpayer, I don't care what you think, you should be paying for abortions out of your own hard-earned tax dollars. I don't see how that can be a winning argument.
It can't be a winning argument. I'm getting depressed actually having this podcast with you. There's so much that I think we see through it, right? We see through all the banter and propaganda and this political jockeying and manipulation that's happening on the people. But the reason why I get depressed thinking about it is because of the people that don't see it.
Yeah.
They don't have the mental maturity, or they don't have the acuity to understand what is actually happening.
Yeah.
I mean, when you let someone like AOC talk, and then you have another person like Doug Johnstone talk, and then it becomes an echo chamber. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, you keep hearing all the negatives, all the positive things that can give you hope. They don't exist.
Yeah,
they don't exist. And I think there's a lot of really good things that are happening in our country and with people, and then we have conversations that the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling from the left, and we abandon all hope. We abandon all sort of understanding of some of the realities that are happening in our everyday life. The fundamentals of our society are still very good, yet we're having conversations about fundamentally because of an emotional response to a virus. I just want to point that out. It's a virus. Is so dramatic.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's one of the reasons that we have this podcast to pull the curtain back and to show people just how calculating these people are, and to show just how radical their ideas really are. Well, we're going to take a real quick break, but we will be right back. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about another promise that Joe Biden has made. And this one is both racist and sexist. So don't go away. We will be right back.
Ronald Reagan famously said that our freedoms are never more than a generation away from extinction. Conservative Daily exists to make sure that never happens. With our community of 700,000 members, we fight every day to hold Congress's feet to the fire and stop them from surrendering our rights and freedoms. The fight to take this country back is not over. Please join our movement right now by going to conservative-daily.com and clicking the subscribe button to sign up for our free call to action newsletters. We have a chance to save this country, but only if we all work together. Again, this is conservative-daily.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button at the top.
All right, well, we are back from that break, and we are going to keep going with our deep dive into the Democratic debate, because, Joe, I used to believe...
I don't know how deep you could have to go.
Well, you don't have to go very deep, but it's you don't have
like
to go very deep.
wading in a small kiddie pool.
Yeah,
wearing a diaper.
It's not even a pool. It's a bucket. So we want to do a shallow dive into this other promise, which I think, listen, if Democrats were honest with themselves, they'd say that what Joe Biden said on that debate stage is both sexist and racist. Now, remember, to be racist, it doesn't mean that you hate black people. It means that you are treating race as a determining factor in whatever decision making you make, right? it's discriminatory on the basis of race. So you can be racist against white people. It is possible. It's not just one way, the way liberals like to say it is. Liberals claim that it's impossible for a black person to be racist because racism requires societal power, right? And black people are inherently powerless in that narrative. So the left says that African Americans cannot be racist. But Joe Biden obviously isn't an African American. So I want to play this for you, Joe, because I think that if we're being honest, this is completely racist. Let's go to cut 7.
Number one, I committed that if I'm elected president and have an opportunity to appoint someone to the courts, I'll appoint the first black woman to the courts. It's required that they have representation now. It's long overdue.
So here, Joe, that is Joe Biden promising that when he makes his decision for who's going to be on the Supreme Court, he's not going to pick the best qualified person. He is going to only look at African American women because he wants to put an African American woman onto the bench. Tell me, Joe, how is that not a racist policy proposal?
It certainly is an ignorant one.
Yeah,
I can't be surprised by the things that we're hearing from the Democrats. And what's even more disturbing is that we're hearing it from the Democrats and they are attacking at every angle. We're letting them create this frenzy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the problem that I see is that there's not a reset happening. There's no one that has any sorts of sensibility that's coming out to say, hey, look, this really isn't a panic. You're fine. You're healthy. You can still work from your environment. You can still do your job. You can still hang out with your kids. This is not the black plague. No one's coming out on the other side to call them out and to hold the media and everyone else responsible. They are controlling the narrative. And by controlling the narrative, I think it's preposterous that Biden would even say anything like that, right? But I'm not surprised by it. I'm not surprised by it because
it's the pandering Olympics. Like, remember when Hillary Clinton went on that black podcast and they asked her what she keeps in her pocketbook, and she said hot sauce, and they said, "Ooh, are you trying to pander, Hillary?" And she said, "I don't know, is it working?" And there was this like awkward like chuckle in the background. Democrats pander. That's what they do. Every 4 years, they pretend to care about this community or that community because they need their votes. It is a competition to see who can pander the most, the fastest. And Joe Biden is apparently the winner because he has the most minority support among Democratic primary voters. But I like to tell liberals who say that this kind of stuff can't be racist. Imagine if it was Trump, and imagine if Trump said, when the next opening, he will only consider a white male. Imagine how liberals' heads would explode at that promise, at Trump promising to only consider white men for that position. If this was a company saying that they will only hire white men, they'd be shut down, right? If this was a restaurant saying that they will only serve white men, they'd be shamed and shut down. But the minute that it's reversed and that it's Biden saying that he's only going to consider a black woman for the job, all of a sudden the left says it isn't racist because black people deserve that. They deserve the preferential treatment because of how they've been treated. And there's definitely an argument to be made that some of that is necessary. But for this specific instance, to say I will only consider a black woman for the court, it is, in my mind, incredibly racist, incredibly sexist. And if a Republican said it, I think, and it was reversed, I think that there'd be calls for them to resign.
Well, what's he gonna? Joe Biden.
Well, here, let's do the next cut because he's not done. He's not done with the pandering. He's not just interested in only appointing a black woman to the court. He is now doubling down on his promise to only name a woman as his vice president. Let's go to cut 6.
Before we do that, it's not cut yet. when I said before that it seemed to me like it was tone deaf. From talking to people out and just having conversations, coffee places, people that obviously colleagues, that everyone said when they watched the debate that it just skimmed over some of the issues we're facing today, and almost as if it's business as usual, where we're going to go and we're going to pander to people and create these promises that make no sense. But there was no economic decisions that were made in that, or economic policy that was drawn out in the debate that would lead me to believe that any of them could deal with the problems that the country is facing today.
Oh, not at all. And if you actually listen, their speeches are the same. They're the same stump speeches. You have Bernie Sanders calling for things like universal basic income, which was an Andrew Yang proposal. You have Bernie Sanders talking about Medicare for all, paid childcare, paid sick leave, right? All of these things were what he was demanding 2 months ago. Now he's using coronavirus, and Joe Biden too. They're using the coronavirus crisis to push their own agendas, saying that, okay, yeah, I was right all along. We need universal basic income. We need to have paid sick leave, paid childcare. They're even talking, Joe, about having the government operate, I guess, some kind of blue apron service and send food to people's houses because their kids qualified for free or reduced lunches at schools. And since the schools are closed, they believe that the kids are now entitled to government-delivered lunches. It's insane just how they're trying to take advantage of this to push their own narratives. It's so obvious to see, because right after they criticize Trump, their actual proposals for responding to coronavirus are not any different than their proposals were a couple months ago.
While we're sitting here actually talking, I'm reading some stuff on that is now just coming out, and I know that we're supposed to be having a conversation about the debate, but we're hearing kind of this forked tongue that everything's okay, do not panic, as somebody else in the media comes out and said, hey, it's time to panic. It really is just kind of, we're just at that special place where if we don't actually start shaking our head loose, we're going to find ourselves in this high school drama club environment where we're yelling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because when you describe it like that, multiple times last night, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden both called Trump an existential crisis. Now, what that means is that they're literally saying that Donald Trump's presence in the Oval Office is a threat to our very existence. I didn't see either of them fighting as if their very existence was at stake. And that's what pisses me off probably the most when they say, oh, Trump's an existential crisis, right? When you see Democrats talk like that, you see the Antifa people punching Nazis because they say, hey, they're a Nazi, I'm allowed to punch them, right? Wouldn't you punch a Nazi? When you hear them use this language, you expect to see over the top demands, and you expect to see some vigor and some actual energy behind it. Because again, Joe, if they're right, our whole world is at stake. Our very existence.
Are we headed towards a civil war?
We've talked about it before. Listen,
are we headed towards a civil war? Are we finally at a place where the temperature in our country has gotten to such a frenzy? You have people, the Harvard Global Health Institute director saying, my biggest hope is that we overreact to the coronavirus. Right? He actually said that.
Yeah.
Is it, and people are creating these math equations.
Was that like a better safe than sorry thing, or
so better safe than sorry? Let's burn down the economy over a flu bug. Although the statistics that we're putting out, they say it's 10 to 20 times more powerful than the flu. The swine flu was 10 to 20 times more powerful than the flu, but we didn't shut down things for the swine flu. And 500,000 people died globally.
Yeah, I told you last time, I had the swine flu. They just sent me back to my dorm room in college to sleep it off. Yeah, no, it was not a big deal. But you asked if we're close to a civil war. The real question is, do liberals, do leftists truly believe that Trump is an existential crisis?
He's not an existential crisis.
I
They
know.
don't like to lose.
I know, but
oh,
do they believe in their heart of hearts that their very existence is at stake if Donald Trump wins? If they believe that their existence is at stake and that if Donald Trump wins, they will cease to exist. That's what an existential crisis means, right? They will cease to exist. Then if they truly believe that, then yes, I see a civil war on the horizon, because if your existence is at stake, you expect people to fight for it, right? But if civil war is not on the horizon, and these people, these little soy boy snowflakes, aren't going to try and go against the most heavily armed voting bloc in world history, if they're going to choose not to do that, then the whole argument that this is an existential crisis is BS, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to solve this peacefully and through negotiation and say if we lose, the world as we know it will cease to exist. I mean, the way they describe it as if it's Thanos. He's just going to snap his finger and all the minorities in the country are just going to float away into dust. If that was true, if that's truly how they feel, then where is the civil war, right? Where is the uprising? Because if that is truly how you feel, you would expect them to actually care enough. But they don't. They sit back. And I'm not trying to egg them on. I'm just saying that if they believe that, you'd expect them to fight harder, and you'd expect Bernie Sanders to go out there and fight harder if he truly, because he said Biden has no chance of beating Trump, or Biden has a very bad chance of beating Trump. If he truly believed that, I would have expected to see him, I don't know, show a little bit more energy.
Well, there isn't any more energy, and the problem is that. And again, I say the problem is there's a lot of problems. A big problem we face today is that the politicians and the government workers and all the people that are out there screaming, we need to get rid of Trump, in this black hole of the deep state, that they don't have to worry about this crisis. This crisis does not affect anyone who is a government worker. It doesn't affect anyone who is a politician. They are absolutely isolated from the problems that 50% or more of this country face today. They are isolated from it. Apple employees are still going to get paid to do the job that they're doing. They have over $500 billion sitting in the bank. So those employees are going to survive it. Although there's going to be mass layoffs over the next 90 days, we're going to see 3 to 5 million people over the next 30 days lose their jobs. Yeah. Most of those jobs are going to come from places in the SMB, the small to medium business world.
Yeah, the service economy, the retail economy, that people aren't going out to eat, aren't going. But
it's going to snowball. It's going to create a hemorrhage in the commercial building space. It's going to create a hemorrhage in the residential space. It's going to hurt realtors. It's going to hurt bankers.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy today. His daughter works as a manager at an escape room, which is where you take 20 people, shove them in a small room, and have them look for clues to figure out how to get out. The escape room is now closed down. They say they don't know when they're going to reopen, because that's like the worst place to go if you're afraid of a pandemic. Let's go with a bunch of strangers into a small room. But you look around the economy, and it's shocking just how many people are at risk of losing their jobs and losing their income, and what that means for the economy as a whole if we allow this panic to grip us. Now, obviously, if you're at risk, if you're showing symptoms, then the best bet to stay home. Don't go out. Don't risk infecting others or risk contracting the disease yourself if you're at risk. But for the rest of us, if we're feeling healthy and we're feeling good, there's no reason not to go out, because honestly, if this economy falters, we're not just looking at Donald Trump losing the next election. We could be losing the country, because the proposals that the Democrats are putting forward are ridiculous.
They're
right?
absurd.
If we lose this country, which the best bet the Democrats have to win in November is a bad economy. If we lose this next election, we lose the country. So it's weird to say go out and shop for America, but it really feels like that, Joe, like after 9/11, where they were telling people to go out and shop because we need to keep the American economy strong. It feels like we need, at least from my vantage point, it feels like I need to go out and go to the mall or something, because I'm terrified of what we saw last night at the debate becoming policy.
which brings me back to whether or not we're going to see a civil war. And I
Yeah.
think that we would be foolish to not think that that's the ultimate end game. Maybe it's not a game, maybe it's not a strategy that somebody's actually planning, but is the end game that we have mass war amongst people. And I think the lack of civility that we face today and the mental midgetry that I see from people that don't know how to operate with any degree of civility or common sense, all the fake news that's out there, it's enough to give, even the sanest person, make the sanest person insane.
Yeah. No, it really is. And that's why, obviously, no one hopes for a civil war. Though I think if it happened, I think these soy boy snowflakes that I call them, I don't think that they will come out victorious. No one hopes for a civil war. And you hope that people wake up, as we mentioned, people wake up and realize just how close we are to losing everything, right? If the economy spirals, Democrats win the next election, and you're talking about everyone gets free everything. They're going for it all this time. It's really scary.
Yeah, well, these are trying times. At the same time that I say it's trying times, it's also good times. The fact that there aren't sports on TV is leading families to spend more time together. So there's much more quality time that we're seeing happening in the family units. People are having more conversations than ever, even in work environments or out talking to other. I got a chance to talk to lots of other businesses. So I think there's some good things that are coming through to this, and there is some communication that's happening. But there is that 3% or 5% of our population who run around like Chicken Little screaming that the sky is falling. And I think those people are the ones that are hurting us the most.
And thinking that toilet paper will save them from a respiratory illness. I saw a post.
I think they're eating it. I think they're eating the toilet paper.
I saw a post. I hope it was just like a meme. It was just a joke. But I saw a post saying that you can use toilet paper to make a face mask. Now, I don't know what kind of toilet paper they're using, but I could not even imagine using toilet paper as a face mask. But yeah, why does everyone need, as you said, perishable items? Unless you're freezing it, but you're not going to freeze milk. I was at the grocery store last week stocking up for this, and people were running around getting milk, and I was just calmly grabbing powdered milk off the shelf, calmly grabbing dehydrated and condensed milk off the shelf in cans. I bought a box of milk, and they're running around with gallon jugs that expire in a week and a half.
and carts that they're pulling one behind the other.
Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't tell you this, but I was at the grocery store a couple days ago, and I went and got whatever groceries we could actually get, and seen that they were delivering some meats. We had the ability to get some meat, and I had the deli person cut a couple pounds of turkey for me. And so I go and check out, and everything's fine. Say hi to everyone. Just everyone's trying to keep their distance. And I get out to the car, put all the groceries in the car, go home. I unload it. My wife goes, "Hey, so where's the deli meat?" I go, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, there's no deli meat here." And I went, "Okay, well, it was probably $35 in deli meat." So I got back in the car and drove back to the grocery store, and I walk inside, and I said, "Hey, somebody stole my deli meat." From the time that it went from the shopping cart to the car. And the woman actually said, "Oh, well, you sure you didn't misplace it? Maybe you put it in a different drawer." And I go, "No, I'm pretty sure there's no deli meat." And so they went and watched video and watched the woman next to me reach into the cart, grab the bag as I'm walking out when I'm walking up behind me, and stealing the deli meat. They actually stole my deli meat walking out of the grocery store.
It's insane because you expect to see that kind of breakdown of basic societal norms, basic decency. You expect to see that in a truly like stuff hits the fan situation where there's complete breakdown of law and order. But Joe, she stole your meat over nothing.
Yeah.
She's just a meat thief. Maybe that's just her thing.
After I paid for it.
Maybe that's just her thing. Maybe she was doing that. Maybe she was doing that before coronavirus. Maybe that's her thing.
I don't think so. I'm hearing more of these stories. These stories are happening all over the place. People stealing toilet paper and running into businesses and taking the Purell bottle off the counter. We are seeing crazy things happen that we would not see before. And it's almost as if we've gotten past the point, like there's a break point. We've gotten past the lunacy break point. And now we just have, as a society, no sort of maturity in how we handle situations.
Yeah.
There's no, it's chaos. It absolutely is chaos.
Law and order can only be maintained as long as people fear the consequences of their actions. If they don't believe that there's going to be a government to put them in prison, because, I mean, why would you follow the law? I live in San Antonio. They're releasing prisoners from the jails right now, and they're not sending any new misdemeanor prisoners to jail right now because of the risk of the infection spreading within the jailed population. Why would anyone in San Antonio who is already criminally minded, why would any of them obey the law when they know they've been told straight to their face, you will not be arrested, you will not go to jail? That's part of it, Joe. They don't believe
same thing's happening here. They said anybody for minor crimes. Well, I carry a weapon everywhere I go.
You're gonna kill someone over your meat?
I'm not going to kill anybody over my meat or anybody else, but imagine if where the line is drawn in the sand for those criminals. The criminals are now drawing a line in the sand. What if that line in the sand goes further one way than another, right?
And that's the problem when you believe that you will not be punished, or that you believe society has broken down so much that the laws don't apply anymore. That's where it gets dangerous. That's where it gets really dangerous, because then your fellow man just becomes an animal fighting for survival. If they're only interested in themselves and they're only interested in making sure that they can wipe their behind, God knows why they think they're going to run out of toilet paper. If that's all they care about, then yeah, they're going to make very selfish decisions, and you're going to see people's TVs start floating away in the middle of the night, and you're going to see people's cars starting to disappear because they don't care. They don't feel like there's any consequences for their actions. So hopefully we don't get there. Hopefully we don't, because if we go any farther where people start actually hurting people, right? It's one thing to steal someone's meat. It's another thing to beat them up to get the meat, right? To get the deli meat. That there's a line. I don't know where that line is, but
nobody's beating me up for my deli meat.
Yeah, I know, but listen, there are places in the country where people get killed for a hell of a lot less.
I know.
Vulnerable people. The question is, where is that point? Are we anywhere near that point where your neighbor who you wave to, you see them in church on Sunday, will stab you in the back for the last bag of donuts on the shelf, right? That's the terrifying part of this. I hope we're nowhere near that, but the fact that people are already starting to break the law because they don't believe they'll be punished, we're closer to that point than we were the last time we talked about like societal unrest and whatnot.
Well, I do pray that we can have a little bit of sensibility that returns to what we do, but I'm not sure that's going to happen, mostly because leadership is what dictates what other people do in your environment, and there's not a lot of good leadership that's happening right now. And I don't think that President Trump was wrong when he came out and said, hey, listen, let's not panic. This will be gone in a couple months. He's being more realistic, and yet the left used it as a chance to pounce, and then the media, being the left-leaning, warmongering, always never let a crisis go without some opportunity being gained. They create another narrative, and then the narratives fight against each other. Yeah. And then the first person that dies, second person dies, third person dies. Oh, there's 50 people that got diagnosed. There's 100 people. There's 2,000 people. There's 3,000 people. It sounds like it's being spread like wildfire, and it's not being spread like wildfire. What's happening is people have gone through these cycles where they could have had it for a week or 10 days. And so I already believe that coronavirus was here back when they found it in Wuhan province, right? Yeah. I believe it was already here. I believe that it's made its way around the country. And if we had enough tests and we tested people, there's probably 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 that have already had it.
Yeah.
I think we're making a mountain out of a molehill, and it's destroying people's lives.
Well, listen, that's why doctors don't recommend that you get a full body scan, right? They don't recommend that you do that, because you're going to find things wrong with you that really aren't a big deal, but you're going to start getting nervous over it. That's why a lot of people are hesitant to take DNA tests to figure out whether they're at risk for certain ailments down the line, or genetic conditions, because it's so easy to make a mountain out of a molehill and to look at this slight odd and balloon it up to make it seem like it's the end of the world. So it's scary. It's scary to see how much things have fallen apart just in this short time over pure media-driven panic. It really is. Well, we're up against a hard break now. So that's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. If you like this content and you want to hear more of it, please make sure that you like it. Subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and hit the bell button for notifications. And then you can find us on the Google Play Store and on Apple, in the Apple Store as well. So again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Otto.
And remember that the fight to take back our country is not over, but the only way we can win is if we all fight together.